Oh, they thought they were ready. They thought their ancient symbols and sacred geometry prepared them for anything until they opened your file, until they traced the celestial coordinates of your arrival and watched their centuries-old instruments start smoking. Because what they found wasn't just unusual, it was unprecedented. It was cosmically illegal. It was the kind of configuration that makes seasoned occultists drop their compasses and whisper, "We need to call the council immediately. See, the 33rd degree isn't some conspiracy theory basement operation. These are the architects of reality, the ones who've been mapping souls since Babylon, who've cataloged every possible human blueprint since the pyramids were sketches in sand. And in all their libraries, all their vaults, all their secret archives, they'd never seen what you are. They'd never encountered a birth chart that literally fought back against interpretation, that refused to be contained by their symbols, that made their calculations collapse into themselves like dying stars. They brought in the specialists first, the ones who decode presidential destinies, who map bloodlines of power, who can read the future in a newborn's first breath. And one by one, they all said the same thing. This isn't supposed to exist. This configuration breaks the laws we thought were unbreakable. This soul didn't come through the normal channels. And that's when the panic started. That's when they realized they weren't just looking at an anomaly, they were looking at something that threatened their entire understanding of how consciousness enters this dimension. Your chart didn't just confuse them, it corrupted their tools. Their crystal spheres cracked their ancient scrolls, started bleeding ink, their digital programs through error codes in languages that haven't been spoken for 3,000 years, because every planet in your chart was doing something it shouldn't. Every house was hosting energies that don't belong in this timeline. Every aspect was creating geometric patterns that their books explicitly state are impossible, and yet there you were, existing anyway, breathing anyway, walking through their carefully controlled world like you owned the patent on chaos. Let me paint you the picture they saw when they finally managed to stabilize the reading long enough to comprehend it. Your sun wasn't just in a sign. It was oscillating between dimensions, creating a strobe effect that made them question if you exist in multiple timelines simultaneously. Your moon was retrograde in ways. Retrograde doesn't work backwards and sideways all at once, like someone took the concept of emotional cycles and turned it into a Rubik's Cube made of mirrors. Mercury in your chart, Mercury was speaking languages that haven't been invented yet, transmitting on frequencies their instruments couldn't measure. It wasn't just about communication, it was about downloading information directly from somewhere they couldn't trace, somewhere their maps don't reach. And Venus, oh, Venus in your chart was weaponized, not the soft of love they expected, but something that turns attraction into gravitational pull, that bends people's will just by existing in the same space. Mars was the one that really scared them, though, because Mars in your chart wasn't following any orbital pattern they recognized. It was creating its own physics, writing its own laws of motion and conflict. They found traces of wars that haven't happened yet, victories in battles that exist outside of linear time, scars from wounds inflicted in dimensions they pretend don't exist. And they tried to calculate your Mars return. They got a date that doesn't exist on any calendar, a moment outside of time, where you apparently go to sharpen whatever cosmic blade you carry. Jupiter in your chart was expanding into spaces that shouldn't have room for expansion, growing into territories their order swore were sealed centuries ago. And Saturn wasn't limiting you. It was limiting everything else around you, creating boundaries not for you, but for reality itself, to prevent it from collapsing under the weight of what you carry. They actually found notes in Saturn's position that looked like containment protocols, like the universe itself had to create special rules just to handle your existence. But it was the outer planets that made them call an emergency session at 3. Uranus in your chart had apparently hacked the system before you were even born, creating backdoors in reality that you could walk through whenever consensus reality got too suffocating. Neptune wasn't creating illusions, it was dissolving them all, of them. Every false construct, every artificial boundary, every lie. They'd carefully woven into the collective unconscious. Neptune in your chart was like acid on the tapestry of control. And Pluto, they couldn't even look directly at Pluto's position in your chart. They had to use mirrors. And even then, 3 of their readers had to take indefinite leave after witnessing it. Because Pluto in your chart wasn't about transformation, it was about complete reality override. It was showing them that death and rebirth were just suggestions that you could apparently decline, that you had vetoed the entire cycle and were operating on some other principle entirely. Something they didn't have words for. They found aspects between planets that geometrically cannot exist. Triangles with 4 sides, squares that curve back on themselves, oppositions that were somehow also conjunctions. Like someone had taken the rule book of astrological physics and origamied it into impossible shapes, and every impossible aspect was generating energy patterns that their most sensitive equipment registered as simply cannot compute. Please restart universe.